all topped off your tea, coffee, water, whatever keeps you going. Thanks for sticking around. We're going to be diving a little bit more into OpenFN specifically. So talking very much about the specific tool and just what are some of the key concepts and capabilities. And this is both to just make sure that you all understand, what are some of these options that might be leveraged by this integration tool, as well as a primer just for the coming days, particularly some of these sessions where we'll be a little bit more hands-on on how to use different aspects of the solution. This is just to ensure that we're speaking the same language. So I'm going to hand off to my colleague Rita in a moment to kind of lead us through this overview. And I'll be piping in here and there with commentary, but I'll be keeping an eye out on the chat and the video screens as well. So if you have any quick question, feel free to raise your hand or drop a quick chat. And we're happy to speak about that specifically. So Rita, over to you.
Cool, thanks, Alexa. So yes, as Alexa mentioned, I'm just gonna give you a quick overview of the key concepts, terms that we're using when we're talking about the platform, look at some of the management options that you can use to control access and security and things like that. And then we're going to switch over to the platform itself, and also going to give you a chance to click around and follow along with me if you have an account with OpenFN. If you manage to sign up already, please leave your email that you used for signing up in the chat, so we can add you to the training project that I will use, so you can follow along real time. OpenFN overview. At this stage, you have a better sense of what it is and what it's capable of. So OpenFN is this pipeline infrastructure to connect systems, which can be different technologies or even across different organizations. And it is able to not just get, fetch data and load data, but also to transform, process, clean in the process. So this can be just to use to fetch data from one system, like Kobo Toolbox or ODK, do a bit of formatting and then load it into a database. It can be also used to automate a whole cleaning workflow. It is also possible to use it for keeping two systems in sync. So if there's maybe two organizations that are collecting data using two systems and you want to keep them in sync, it's also possible to set up a two-way integration, a two-way synchronization to keep the two systems consistent.
And just a quick comment there, just so you all know, if you've ever worked with integrations before, or just like are approaching this problem of integration, there are typically like two ways organizations go about solving for that, or three. There's the manual option where you export information and you move it through Excel and upload it to another system. There's a custom option where you might hire a developer that can actually build or develop an integration for you to automate those connections. But then there are available integration tools out there. So you might have come across tools like Zapier or IFTT. Those are some other integration options there. But OpenFN specifically targets this social sector space. So it's really flexible and meant to work with a lot of particularly open source tools that we see really popular in the social science sector. And so as Rita said, it offers a number of capabilities, but is ultimately an integration platform that we're dealing with. Thanks, Rita.
So one of the main key concepts that we've been using so far to describe how OpenFN does integration is through jobs. So in a job, you can define a series of tasks, a series of steps or operations that you want to be performed. So these steps could be to connect to a system, to connect to Kobo, and fetch, extract data from a set of surveys. That could be one job. It could be that take this set of data that is fetched and transform each piece of data and transform each answer to the questions this way, format dates this way. That could be a series of tasks, that could be steps for another job. And then we could have a job to take all these transformed clean data and load it into this database that we're connecting to. So here on the screen you have these 3 examples of getting data, of getting updated forms from Kobo. So look at if there has been any change and fetch those forms, or take the data from the basic necessities surveys and load it into the database. So through these jobs, so these are fully configurable. So you can write your own jobs to automate any of these integration flows that we've mentioned. So just to dive into it just a little bit more, so you would have one job where OpenFN connects to Kobo to get the data, and then the response you get back is in this JSON format, this structured format that Alexa mentioned, that would basically describe your Kobo form and has the information from the submission in this structured format, which then can be directly first transformed or cleaned, and then inserted into a database. So if you have a piece of data that captures who was the enumerator, or who took that survey, then you can load that into the enumerator column of your database as a piece of structured data that is ready there for review and analysis. So through these steps of integration, of automation, you can set up a project where you link these jobs together so that each time there is a new submission that is received for your Kobo form, it is immediately sent to OpenFN, transformed in the ways that you have defined, and then loaded into your database.
And just a couple of things to add on to what Rita's saying. If y'all are thinking about kind of what OpenFN can do, just remember at a high level, OpenFN can connect to any application or data source that can get online. If that application has what we call a web API, so that a particularly REST API, that portal for accessing over HTTP requests for the more technical folks, OpenFN will work out of the box. If you have a database or a system with an underlying database architecture, OpenFN can write and execute SQL. So it can be used to access and manipulate those database structures as well as the database inside. But if you're ever wondering, hey, can OpenFN send a task in Asana? For example, a good place to look is at that application's available documentation for their API. So if you want to know how OpenFN might access Asana to perform a series of tasks or operations, you might want to go to Asana's API to see, hey, what's possible there, and then you can kind of get a sense of like all the different functions that OpenFN might call. So that's just to provide a high level of jobs there, but I know Rita will be kind of sharing a little bit more with us in the coming days of like how the jobs actually work, how you set them all up. But wondering if there's any quick questions here.
Alexa and Rita, so open function, it can pull data from a COBO toolbox data set. Can it, as new records are added to that data set, does it pull just those new records, or do you wait until you've got all your records and then you use open function to, how does that work?
So both are possible. Through one method, you can set up a webhook on the COBO side. So you connect COBO to your open function project, to your open function inbox, so that each time a new submission is received, it is automatically sent to open function, processed immediately, and then sent to the database. So that could be one by one. Alternatively, you can set up an open function job to go to COBO and fetch a set of submissions from this date to that date, for example. A possible use case for that would be if you've collected data previously. So you already have a set of data collected in COBO when you're just setting, you want to load that in bulk into your database. So you can set up an open function job to go and fetch all that data and load to the database. Another use case would be if you're cleaning data directly in COBO, because in that case, once the data is cleaned, COBO does not resend the updated data through the webhook. So if you have a workflow where you're cleaning data in COBO, then you would need open function to go and fetch the updated data and insert that into the database.
And just the three options at a very high level to remember is you can integrate the data in real time with COBO. You can do it in bulk on a schedule. So every morning, every hour, every 3 hours, or you can do it on demand. So today I want to pull everything for the last month or the last week. So as Rita outlined kind of more detailed use cases, all three are possible, just kind of how you configure these jobs.
Thanks, guys. That was very clear.
Great. Any other questions at this point? So now we have a concept of how jobs work, and at some point, either you get COBO to send submission data to open function, or open function goes and fetches data from their COBO or your data collection tool. At that point, what you have in open function is a message. So that is a discrete piece of data. For example, one submission that is received in your open function project, in your open function inbox. So here's one example. This is what we mentioned, the JSON representation of one submission to the sharks and rays COBO form in COBO. So this is an example submission, and here you have the identifiers of the question. So if you have some details of the boat that made a specific catch that you're interested in, and here you have a couple of here you have the answers to some of the questions in the form from that one submission. So as jobs are executed, each execution is what we call a run. So each time OpenFunction goes and fetches data from Kobo, or each time OpenFunction goes and loads a set of data to a database, that is a run. In OpenFunction on your project, you have the log, the history of each run, of each execution. So you can track exactly what happened, when, if there was any failure or success. You can look into the details of each job execution. And if you want to, you can set up the jobs in a way that log the exact data that was processed and sent. But you can also choose, for example, not to log any personal information in the activity logs.
So just to add on there, the platform not only gives you the jobs to do these connections, but this is your administrator console. Reed, if you go back to that run screenshot.
Yes.
So if anything goes wrong in any of these data flow steps, that's logged right here. And so you can go, and as Rita said, you can like check out and see, what data did we try to upload? Why did that transaction fail? An OpenFunction can also be configured so that if there is any failure, let's say that someone changed the password or the username to the login, the database that you're trying to upload information to, or maybe they deleted an entire data table or renamed a column, you can get that alert and you can check out what went wrong in that process and then reprocess it right in the moment. You don't have to go back all the way back to Kobo and pull the information again. It provides this temporary storage of that information, so that way you can troubleshoot and process and get that data in the place it needs to be. But as Rita will speak to later, that is configurable. So if there are any concerns about even just that temporary storage of data in OpenFunction for this retry capability, there are options where you configure it so no data is actually saved on OpenFunction.
So these are the core elements for OpenFunction core functionality. I would like to show you a few ways to manage your OpenFunction projects on an operational or at a team level. So you have access to project spaces. So you can set up a project just to organize related jobs, to organize together jobs related to one project you have in your organization, or jobs related to the whole organization. And you can define access levels. So you can define who has access to a certain project. You can monitor project activity. So look at how many runs have happened and keep track of your usage. So it is really just a way that kind of functionally makes sense for you to monitor and for you to give access to.
So we've seen some organizations that might have, one OpenFunction project for their whole organization. So you might have this one project space where you manage every single integration flow. But if you wanted to control access to those different data flows, you might have separate projects in OpenFunction. So you can separate that out where maybe for this specific set of social science data flows, it's only a certain user group and another user group. Or you might even have one project space where you share with other organizations. So the project is kind of that core unit for grouping these data flows, but then within that specific project too, you can assign different users with different access levels. and administrators can control and then remove that. But those are just some of the basic kind of user management features at a high level, and just some additional security features as well that Rita will get to.
It is also possible that you outgrow your project. You start with one, and then as you scale and maybe add different types of workflows, then at some point you decide that you take some of those and reorganize them into a different project and just give access to those who need to have access to that subset. So it's flexible as well. The open function has to store credentials, your login information for the different systems that it connects to. So if it has to connect to Kobo, it has to store the URL, username and password, and store the database login information. So all these are stored in a secure encrypted way, and only those can view the details, the actual username and actual password and the other details, who entered them in the system, who owns them. So they can be used for different jobs or across projects by anyone who has access to the project, but they can only be viewed by those who own them, who entered them.
So just some use cases we've seen here is if, for example, you're connecting a bunch of Kobo forms to one database, you might have your administrator log into OpenFN and set up this credential, this authorization for information for accessing this database. And that administrator can choose to allow jobs to use that credential to then upload data to that database, as an example. But those credentials can be shared in a way where they can be used by the jobs, but the details cannot actually be used by any user. So in that way, as an administrator, you can say, yes, like any job in this project can upload data, but I'm not going to actually show you the username and password information to make sure that no one is logging into your account. So in that way, it allows for kind of that secure credential capture, but still some sort of way to share it and allow this credential to be used across different organizations or user groups and things like that. So there's a lot more documentation on that, but feel free to reach out with any questions as well.
And just an overview and probably recap of some of the security and access control features of OpenFN. So user access, who has access to the jobs and to the incoming data and to the logs is controlled on a project level. You can also control what the systems and how the systems are able to access OpenFN. So for example, if Kobo is set up to send data to your OpenFN project, you can enable additional security so that it has to use a username password to just be able to post data to your project. You also have access to version control. So if you create and modify jobs, you can track and revert to changes through GitHub. And it is also possible that in case you just want to have developers have access to jobs, but not the platform itself, you can just give access to the connected GitHub account. Through activity logs, you have access to the entire trail, all the steps, all the logs that have happened that have been, all the steps that have been executed on the data by the jobs, and also get snapshots of the data throughout the process. As you also mentioned, you have the option to either anonymize or entirely not log personal information in the incoming data, and even it is possible to set up data flows and processing in a way that data is not even stored on OpenFN, so it is really just flows through the system. Any questions up to this stage on either on concepts or management or on security?
I have a question. What if there's a bug with OpenFN that the jobs can't run for any reason? Does that impact our database?
Good question. Our priority is security, stability, and accessibility. So if you're sending data to OpenFunction, we're working day and night to keep that inbox, that system's up and running to always receive that data. With the ConSoSci solution stack specifically, usually OpenFunction is the one to initiate that extraction. So rather than Kobo sending data to OpenFunction rather goes and pulls that data into ConSoSci. But usually these solutions are set up in a way that can be repeatable. So if there is any failure notification, we get alerted immediately, you get alerted immediately, and there is a way to retry any process flows. So if for whatever reason OpenFunction was temporarily down, as soon as it came back up, you can still retry and get that data where you need to go. Or maybe OpenFunction's working great, but there's a bug in the job, as Diane said, and maybe that's something in that original solution that you're borrowing from the GitHub repo, or something wrong with how you coded, set up one of these integrations, and the data is just outputting funny, and it doesn't look nice in the database, and you want to resync that. Through OpenFunction, you can initiate those resyncs. And again, we usually work with organizations to set up these solutions in a way so that it is repeatable, so that you're not creating duplicate data. There is some sort of duplicate checking step, and that way you can reprocess, retry, refresh information. And I know particularly in this space where data cleaning happens a lot, getting those different snapshots of data, different states, having that refresh option is sometimes really valuable.
Any other questions? So if not at this point, I will switch over to the OpenFunction platform and actually show you around. If you signed up already at openfn.org/signup, then please just chat your email address so we can add you, and if you can follow along if you wish to. So when you log into OpenFunction and select your project, where you land is the inbox. So in the inbox you have your messages. Does anyone remember what is a message? What is in a message? You can, if anyone has a
pop quiz. James, any recollection of what a message is in OpenFunction?
No. I think no. Sorry.
No worries. This is why we're here. So Rita, you want to go back to that main inbox page? So when you log into your OpenFunction project, you all might see this as well. You land on your inbox, And I like to think of my open function inbox kind of like your Gmail inbox. Anytime anyone's sending information, that's going to come through as a message. So Rita, you want to maybe click into that message and kind of walk us through there?
So if you click into a message, what you're interested in the message body. And in this case, the message body, let me just scroll down to a part that is a bit more descriptive. The message body is the representation of one submission, one data submission, which is in this case, one submission to a COBOL form. So this is that the responses were for some of the questions in this form. So these are the question IDs. So for example, here in this form, it's called the Sharks and Rays form. They're collecting information about a catch that was captured and the details of the boat that captured that catch and the details of the catch. And here what we see are the question IDs. So for example, here we have what was the species that was captured, and in this case it was unknown. So this message in the inbox is one COBOL form submission that OpenFN has received from COBOL, and it is sent and stored in this structured JSON format.
And so in this context, we talk a lot about COBO. So messages are usually just COBO form submissions, but a message in OpenFN might be any data that you're passing through the platform. So if you're pulling information from CSV sources, a message might be a CSV upload. Or if you're connecting to another tool like ODK, it might be an ODK submission, or it might be an SMS if you're routing SMSs through the platform. So just think of like a message as that discrete piece of data that OpenFN might be receiving and then passing onwards to other systems.
I have a question. So if we just created our OpenFN account, should we have messages or cases submitted by others? Should we be seeing anything? If I have a message in there, but I don't recognize.
Awesome. So Brandy, what project are you in? You see on Rita's screen, she has the ConSoSci training project.
Uh-huh.
What is your project?
Well, I have the ConSoSci training project, but I also have my own specific project, and I was looking in there and I saw messages. So
awesome. Well, you just set up your first OpenFN account, and in there that's just kind of like the template account project we set up. And so there's a couple example messages that you might be seeing in your inbox, and that's just showcasing potentially other integrations. For this space, I recommend exploring messages in the ConSoSci project because it's probably data that's a little bit more familiar.
Okay, thanks.
Cool.
Just a very quick question. Just in terms of the difference then between the messages and the activity, is it that the messages will give you the actual data itself that's being communicated and the activity just monitors the kind of job code or something that's processed?
Exactly. So the message is the piece of data that's coming, and the activity is what happened to that data, what the jobs that have been set up actually did. So if I switch over to activity history, this is the log of jobs, these operations processing that data, processing those messages, and the log of what they were actually doing.
So your messages are like your inputs, And then whether you do anything with those inputs is determined by jobs. So do you have jobs set up to trigger when certain messages come in? And then the run is just the history of that. So like, great, you got this data from Kobo, but how did OpenFunction transform and clean that data to load it into a database? Which database did it load it into? Which tables did it load it into? And so that's what you can choose to detail in those run logs. And those can be super, super detailed, or you might choose to configure them so that you're not logging the actual data you're uploading to try to kind of restrict data access. Totally up to you, but that activity is that transaction that happened.
If we switch to the jobs section in the panel, if you're in the ConSoSci training, you see a couple of jobs that we had set up. So the first one that you see, which is called fetch survey responses, does what it says on the cover. It fetches submissions, responses to a survey to a form. So we're not going to go into too much detail on how it exactly does that, but in the following some of the following sessions we will dig a bit more deeper into how a job is set up to do that. But at this point, as you're just getting familiar with the platform and with your project, you can go to jobs and click around and look at the titles. We have examples for the different types of operations that are possible. So we have example for fetching responses, or to load responses from a survey into a database.
Hey, Rita, do you mind clicking into that job one, load BNS form? I think that's a nice, simple example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so here's a really, really simple job that's loading data from a BNS survey to a database. So we can see that little lightning bolt, that's the trigger. So anytime a form that's labeled BNS survey comes in from Kobo, this job is going to run to access that demo database it's connected with. And it's going to use that PostgreSQL, that language PostgreSQL adapter or connector to access that database. And then it's going to execute that script that you see below. So that looks like a really simple job where we're just inserting rows in a database on a table called BNS answers. And it looks like we're just logging three data points for every form submission that comes in. So that's what a job looks like at a super simple level. And if you're just doing transfer from one system to another, like you can see this format is kind of almost like an Excel syntax that's quite easy and quick to write. But of course they could be powered up and really set up to do some more complex manipulation. And if you stick around for some of the advanced sessions, we'll get a lot more into that. But feel free to click around this ConSo training project and look at the jobs. But in the session that's next week, we'll talk about some of these specifically, as well as this automation solution for rapid form deployment. So Rita, I know we have 5 minutes, so want to definitely open up the floor for questions. Is there anything else that you want to maybe highlight to folks here?
I think I just wanted to point to the documentation. We're going to share, I think the slides are shared just in case before we move on, just to make sure that everyone has access to this. So there's a specific ConSoSci documentation. We have docs.openfn.org where we have documentation not just on OpenFN but also lots of the connected systems and how to integrate. So that just just what I wanted to highlight.
Fantastic. Thanks, Rita. Do you mind pulling up that agenda we have just for the coming days? And while Rita does that, does anyone have any other kind of questions just on open function at a high level on some of this terminology? If you all are interested in understanding kind of how it works, how to actually use some of these solutions, definitely encourage you to join in the coming days. But we want to just pause here if anyone has any questions or comments.
Alexa and Rita, just to repeat, I think this was a really super first introduction to OpenFN. I learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to learning more.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to having you in the upcoming sessions. For which the agenda is
Maybe
here.
not a question, but just to let everyone know. So as this training was recorded, it will be put online on the ConSoSci YouTube channel that you can find in the beat.
Thanks, Diane. And any questions can go to info@consosci.org. So I'll just drop that again here in the email. I also dropped a link in the chat to the documentation site if you want to check that out further. So we did center on those pre-reading of those key concepts. So if you didn't get a chance to look at that before today's session, I do recommend that before we dive into the session on Monday. But looking forward to getting into this rapid form deployment and just talking through some more specific use cases. Awesome. Well, Rita and I will hang around for 5 minutes longer. If anyone has any questions or comments or any particular use cases you want to just kind of chat about with your organization, happy to hang around.
Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thanks, everyone.